ready when you are, mate. Let me just mic check, sorry.
Mic check 1, 2, 3.
Is that like Will Smith?
I was going to leave the 3 off then. I just chucked it in.
Are you comfy there? Yeah, because you leant forward, so just do it naturally.
Mic check 1, 2, 3.
It's fine.
Do you want us to not move too much?
No, you can move. It's just
You
leant
just go
forward
louder.
yeah, he leant forward to talk into the mic. So
Not like this all the way through.
Yeah, that's what I mean. So you're fine sitting back, but just talk now so I can hear the
Yeah.
the mic.
Can you hear that? Is that okay?
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, you're both fine.
Cool. Let's do it. Welcome to the second episode of the Beyond the Numbers podcast, supported by Nubria. Thanks very much for your support. Today's guest is Ben Cartwright. Would you mind introducing yourself a little bit, Ben?
Yeah, I'm Ben. I'm founder of Football Fitness Federation and also M3 Perform.
Great. So obviously we're friends. But what we're going to do today is go back to the beginning of your story with Football Fitness, the Football Fitness Federation, find out where the need came from and when you first figured that out, and obviously bring it to the present day, which is an exciting time with what's about to come. So where did the idea come from for the Football Fitness Federation, and what were the initial steps?
So kind of ironically, the initial idea was from an event that I attended off my own back because I was working in football, and I met a coach that I'd actually spoken to online quite a bit. So we met at an event which wasn't a networking event, but it was kind of ran like a networking event where people engaged and interacted. So after that, we started speaking quite a lot, and we realised there was probably a bit of a gap in the market in terms of setting up something that we now run.
What was the event for? What was you doing there?
The event was actually, so it was it must have been either the end of 2012 or 2013, so it was after the Olympics.
Right.
So it was the guy that did the GB Olympic football team. He was the S&C for the Olympic football team. So he was presenting some of the work that he'd done in the Olympics. So we went to watch that essentially, but I couldn't really tell you too much of what he actually presented, but it was more about people that you met at the event, which arguably is what you take from a lot of events, I would say, more than the actual content. So yeah, from that, it was kind of like dating. So it was like we met up a few times after that, and then you realise that something could actually happen in terms of a business. So yeah, that was the very start of it. And then the initial ideas were, I suppose, like any transition of a business that it started, that we had probably hundreds of different ways that we could take the business and what it would actually look like, who we'd work with.
So was you meeting to potentially start a business, or was you meeting to share knowledge?
No, it all came pretty organically.
Yeah.
It was literally just conversations about things that we'd maybe experienced within our roles, some challenges that we faced within our roles, maybe trends within the industry that we spoke about. So it was just conversations off the back of that.
And while we're near the beginning still, if you could just let everyone know that doesn't know what the Football Fitness Federation is and what it does and stands for.
Yeah, so now we
present day.
we have a few strands of the business. So I've got a podcast where we speak with guests, anyone involved in football performance, I usually say. So we've had strength and conditioning coaches, sports scientists, nutritionists, psychologists, players, technical coaches, anyone that's going to impact performance with players. So we do a weekly episode. It's all guest episodes. So we have that area of the business. We've also got an online community. So the online community was formed because we wanted to sort of pull coaches from around the world and give them one place, one platform to share ideas and to network with one another. We also run networking events. So the networking events, we have presentations, and all the presentations get filmed. They get uploaded onto the online community. So if you're based in the Northwest, but there's an event in the Southeast, you can still access the content that's been at that event. So they're the main three: the podcast, the community, and the events. And then obviously, I'm sure we'll touch on it, but we've also now got a conference coming up as well.
The initial conference. And who's your typical client?
So I'd say the main clients on both the podcast and the events and the community are coaches, either first team or academy in football across all levels. So we've got coaches at Premier League clubs. We've also got coaches working in amateur football as well.
Yeah, so obviously yours is the Football Fitness Federation, as I know, is a networking group and community for coaches who want to share ideas and upskill and progress their careers, which is obviously what you're doing really, really well. So if we rewind to where we were before, what was your position at that time when you were attending these events and having chats with your future business partner? Where was you at and what was you doing?
So I was working in football. So I was in football for about 5 years, and it got to a point where we sort of had these discussions. We realised that we wanted to try and set something up. But in the background as well, I worked as a personal trainer. So I had a diary full of clients, and my other business had an opportunity to, or the other side of what I was doing in terms of personal training, we had an opportunity to set up another business with our mutual friend Lloyd. So it all sort of came at the same time where I was either going to pursue my career in football, and that probably meant stopping personal training and putting all my energy into what I was going to do with football, or it meant setting up Football Fitness Federation where I could keep involved in football and get the gym going at the same time, which meant I could do a bit of both. And that's essentially what I did at that time.
So as you mentioned, you're having these dates. What was the actual dates about?
Dates,
And what was what was the gap you were finding that you were discussing? So you've not got to the point yet where you said that you've now decided to do a business, but what was this evolving into? What was the gap that you thought there was in the industry?
I think a lot of it comes back to what our purpose is now, which is creating opportunities for coaches, and also improving the value of sports science and strength conditioning, the impact that we can have. And one thing that still happens regularly is that you see people speaking about sports science in a way that they don't really understand. So pundits on TV will make comments about injuries or whatever it is. And the fact is there's a confusion there about what the impact can be. So a lot of the conversation would be about so-and-so's said this or so-and-so's posted this online. And it's we probably didn't realise that at the time, that was the actual purpose of setting it up. But a lot of those conversations were around those talking points where it was like confusion, and we wanted to, the value side of it's really important for me because I think people underplay it, they undervalue the actual impact that it can have with players.
And this is 12 or 13 years ago when this is first being founded, isn't it? So it's a completely different world, the football world, isn't it? Like at the time, I understand that sports science wasn't as big a part of the makeup of what's being done behind the scenes. A lot more stuff being done. And obviously this is very football related, but there's a lot of things to take away for any business industry because from my understanding, you said that a lot of stuff was being done with the ball, which basically means doing the thing. And what you decided that was more of a need for was to actually step back and improve in other areas via strength and conditioning and sports science that would give them more output in doing the thing. What does things look like now compared to 12, 13 years ago when you first started the business?
In terms of the business or in terms of like...
Within football clubs?
I think obviously sports science got a lot more popular in terms of the amount of graduates that are coming through university, jobs that are available. So back then, when I say back then, it wasn't that it didn't exist. Like it was, clubs had sports scientists. Obviously, I was in a position with a club, but there was a lot of clubs where it was like a blank slate. So when I went into the club that I was at, it was literally like, we don't have anyone to do this role. See what you can do with the players and see what impact you can have. That doesn't really happen now because even your local semi-pro team has probably got someone supporting the team in terms of sports science and S&C.
It's more like how much they're doing and respecting it rather than if they're doing it or not.
Yeah.
Because from my understanding, obviously football managers are generally the last generation, aren't they, of players? So they're a bit older and they're often doing things that they were being shown when they was a player. So as now the managers are people that have kind of played more recently, you're seeing more modern methods, I guess. And would you say now that every club now is kind of doing it in the way that you would have liked to have seen it almost 15 years ago?
There's definitely still the older school ways in football. I'd say it's less prevalent now. But yeah, there's definitely still that, and it's all based on experience, isn't it? Like you might have some players that have maybe had a bad experience of sports science when they're playing and now they're in management positions. So we can't really judge that or say that's wrong because it's an experience that they've had. But what we can do is show them how useful it can be, how beneficial it can be to players. And that approach that we take to someone like that maybe is resistant, that's where it's really important. You maybe have to tread a little bit more carefully than someone that's completely bought in, because you've also got some modern coaches that are working in the game now that have maybe got a sports science degree. I think maybe Pep's got a sports science degree, and people like that, they really understand what on that level. So if you're speaking to someone like him compared to somebody else, the conversation or the way you go about that conversation is going to be very different.
So if we go back to these initial meetings, then when was it at the point where you went, we've got something here, we need to start making some steps to create this network?
Probably wasn't long into it, to be fair. It was a few sort of chats around certain things that we could do. I remember sitting out and coming out with a bit of a brain dump on, like, we could do this, we could do that. We had all sorts of plans. Like, at one stage it was a facility, it was working with players in groups, it was running seminars, workshops, all this sort of stuff. But then over time, that has just gradually reduced down to what we do now, because that is the stuff that makes a true impact.
Like, it's become more about a networking community and upskilling now, hasn't it?
Yeah.
And what did you actually end up starting with then? So you had all these ideas, including a facility. What was the first thing that you did together? What was the launch of Football Fitness Federation?
I couldn't say the first thing, but like early on, we set the community up relatively early, which was a platform online where we started putting some content on. It didn't look like it does now. It was literally a web page with a couple of links, maybe presentations, a couple of sort of PowerPoint presentations with a bit of information, mainly from us. So that was the very, very early stages, and we got a few members, but not enough to run a business on. We did some coach education stuff, which we tried, and there's always lessons and I suppose failures in a way with businesses, and that was probably one that we were trying to set up seminars thinking, oh, we'll set a seminar up, loads of people will come, and it wasn't the case, because it all comes back to the reputation, which we didn't have then. So we did a little bit of that. We worked with players, so we had a few individual players that came to see us, we had a few groups of players that we tried sort of setting up and getting going, but the norm in terms of like working with players in a group was that it was more of a technical focus. So you could go and see like a technical coach at a local pitch who maybe does run some groups, but it's going to be a lot more on the technical side. We wanted to try and do it a little bit more on the physical side. And there was probably a bit of confusion in terms of what people were actually signing up to, because again, it was that understanding of sports science and S&C.
Yeah, and now a big part of it is the actual in-person network meetings. When was the point where you started to introduce that aspect to the business? So
that probably came. So we started the business in 2013. We probably did the first one of those, I imagine, about 2016, 17. But that looked very different to what it does now. So that was essentially, there's probably more people in this room than there was at one of our first meetings. And then we had a few others after that where we'd put a meeting on, think, oh, it's great, we've got a speaker and all the rest of it. No one would sign up. And bear in mind, these were free meetings initially. People weren't paying for these. So we had a lot of that going on. It took a lot of repetition of trying to get things going. And then I think the kind of breakthrough with that was we were really lucky that a coach actually reached out to us he was working at Aston Villa, and he was like, why don't you come and run an event at our stadium? We'll get one of the suites, you sort of speakers and things like that, and then we'll run the event. So we were like, wow, this is a great opportunity. So again, this is a free event. We managed to get a speaker from Arsenal, and the event was like, it was massive for us, because we were like, actually, this is what it kind of looks like. Rather than being in some room in a hotel, we should be at a football club. You could see the pitch at Villa. Like, there was a lot of different coaches that signed up to it. We had a top level speaker. So that was like, right, this is the sort of blueprint now, what we need to take forward, which is very similar to what we do now.
Yeah, so you almost had a moment which happens with a lot of businesses where somebody else shows you what actually the product should be.
Yeah.
And initially what you thought it was going to be just evolves into something different. Was that the first time that you'd done an event at a football stadium?
Yeah.
Which, as we know now, is kind of the norm, isn't it, doing regular events? And how many people did you have at that event then?
There was probably about, 20 to 30 maybe.
Which is quite a busy event, isn't it? Like, these networking events aren't conferences, the smaller, more intimate networking events, aren't they?
Yeah, because the whole idea with them is that people go and they watch the speaker. But the big part, which I always push, which I think is so valuable in any business, in any industry, but is the fact that the people that you meet. So I'm always challenging people on taking away new contacts, taking away people that you could potentially use in the future. And we've had a really good story, an example from this, from a recent one that we've literally done a couple of weeks ago at Colchester, where the speaker, I wasn't aware of this, but the speaker that we had told a story about, we did an event basically 12 months running in the same place at Colchester United, and he'd attended the event 12 months prior. He'd met a coach there 12 months prior, and at the event this year, he came with him as a member of staff, so we'd actually given him a job. So, and that was the big thing for us, is that, so that's exactly what we do, why we do what we do, is because we're trying to create these opportunities to say, you can meet each other, and you never know where that's going to go in the future.
At what point did you realise that was a big part of the business? Actually, the networking and creating opportunities. Was that something that might have been in the initial chats, or is that something again that came to you as you were going along with the football stadiums? Was it during or before that you realised that networking and opportunity creation was a big part of the business?
I think initially setting the meetings up, it was it's sort of selfish in a way, because we wanted to speak to people. We wanted to see what clubs were doing. We wanted to speak to coaches. So that was probably a big part of it initially. But even with the early meetings, when there wasn't that many people sat around the table, like, it made it easier in a way, because you could literally take away contacts for everyone. So I'd probably say that was quite early. Whether I could answer that question when back then, maybe not, but it was definitely a focus.
So a key moment was the Aston Villa seminar. When would you say the next key moment was after that? Because obviously a lot of things has changed with the business over the last few years. The networking events started to take shape. Where was the community at and things like that at that time?
The community was next to nothing in terms of members. But what we had then is we actually had one of our, who turned out to be one of our, like a long-serving sponsor. He came to the event at Aston Villa as well. And we got into a conversation about actually sponsoring these events, which again, we hadn't really thought about. We were just putting events on and just seeing what happened. There was no plan to end up where we are now. I'd be lying if I said that was the case. But as soon as we had the conversation, he was like, "Oh, we could sponsor the events. It gives us a chance to push our company out to the people that we want, which is essentially your clients." It was like, "Oh, okay. So companies are now going to be interested in getting involved in these because it's their audience as well." So I suppose that was a big breakthrough when we started getting sponsors on the events as well. We also ran them free initially, and we made a choice at a certain point to start charging for a number of reasons. One, because obviously we've got to try and get some money into the business to make sure it runs, but also it's for attendance. Like, if you've ever run a free event, you're probably lucky to get 40-50% of the people actually turn up, which just didn't make it. We just couldn't run stuff like that because of room bookings. We started having like a catering company giving us food and snacks, and they'd say how many people are coming, and you're like, well, 50 have signed up, but we're actually only probably going to get 20 or whatever it is. So we had to take that step where it's like you confirm in your place. They're not expensive meetings, but you're paying to confirm your place on the event. So that was probably another big step as well.
And a key moment that I know of is at the time when obviously this business started with two of you and now it's just yourself. How did that come about, and what kind of direction did you decide to go in after that moment?
Yeah, so that was obviously off the back of a lot of sort of conversations, and I think it just became apparent that we both probably had slightly different intentions with what we were doing. And personally, I can't speak for anyone else, but from my perspective, and even now I sit here and I think the potential of football fitness is massive. And I knew that there was huge potential from where we were at to where we're sort of around about where we are now. But to do that was going to take a lot of work and time and effort. And I was in a position where I was like, I wanted to put that into it. And I just knew that for us to drive it like that, it had to be a decision. So it came down to a conversation. It was sort of, do we agree with what is needed to be done? Do we agree with where things are going? It wasn't quite aligned. So it was just like it was a mature conversation between us, and we split at that point in 2020. And then since that point, I sort of drove things on by myself with help from different people in different ways, but no one actually involved in the business day to day. And then most recently, I've now took a member of staff on, Jordan, who's helped us kick on again because he's bringing fresh ideas. I always say with Jordan, like I was in football for 5 years, but it's quite a long time ago now, and it's getting longer and longer ago. Whereas he's come out of football more recently, so he's got a more modern day. I don't know whether modern day is the right phrase, but he's got a more like recent view of what is actually going on in the game.
And how would you say you found running a business on your own compared to running it with somebody else? Like, what was that next year like? Did you kind of accelerate, or did it slow you down? How did you find that next 12 months after the changes?
I mean, the pressure's on you, isn't it, at that point? So you know that everything that's got to be done, you've got to do it yourself. But I think the hard thing is that the conversations that like when you've got a business partner, you can speak to them and sort of bounce ideas off each other. You're able to, if anything gets too emotional, whatever, you're there for each other and you can sort of graph together. Whereas we had harder times, or I had harder times in that period, and I had to use others that aren't actually involved in the business, which is still fine, and that's great to have that support system, but it's probably different to having an actual business partner.
And at this point, 2020, would you say that the initial chats you had was just a completely different business to where you was at in 2020, and that's probably why it made things quite difficult, really, because the vision that you both had was understandably different because there was so much evolution going on. Would you say that the direction you've gone in now is anything like what you originally sat down and discussed in your first meetings?
I think it was really hard to plan out. I think, and I'm one of these people that I like to make plans, but it's like with any business, isn't it? It doesn't always end up where you expect it to go. So we had ideas and ways that we wanted to progress. But like I said, with like the sponsors and the meetings, for example, we hadn't really thought that, we could get a stadium, we could get sponsors. That wasn't really within the plan. It came to us because of the fact we maybe put ourselves in positions and opportunities of speaking to the right people at the right time. But then you realise at that point, well, actually, we've done this with one sponsor. We could maybe get a few more sponsors, or we've got this one stadium. How about we can get another stadium? We could work at a number of different clubs across the season. So it opens up the ideas. And I think it was just that natural sort of evolution of, like, this is what we've done this year. We can build on it next year, and this is how we're going to build on it.
So with the network meetings, like, you've done some really big ones. What would you say have been like your biggest highs as far as events and your kind of highlights so far?
Probably sounds like cheesy this, but when we start the events, my big thing is still, I want people to be chatting, because in football, it's notorious that people say, I've not got time to do extra education. I've not got time to network with people, which I get because it's a busy industry. And we always say on the podcast, if you're in a 30-hour job, a 30-hour-a-week job, it's probably going to be 60. Like, you stay there, you stay at training grounds and all the rest of it, which in a lot of industries is going to be similar. But it's definitely the case in football. My big thing in the events is that when we set the events off and we start the event, we introduce it, we set people off with a bit of a task to meet other people. The room just erupts with people chatting, and these are people that don't know each other. So at that point, I'm always like, that's a good sign. Like, all these people are now speaking, they're creating different discussion points. They might be bringing up things that they're experiencing at their club, and then they're probably agreeing and say, actually, yeah, we've had that and we've done this. So that's the big win for us at most events. If there's ever a quiet room, it's always a bit like, we've not quite done this right. So that's the big thing that we're looking out for. The presentations that we've had and the guests that have came to speak to us, the level of content that we've had from those has been like unbelievable, which I don't want to downplay that at all, because like some of the presentations and the insights that people give is incredible. But I just think that side of it is, there's no one else doing that. And I think it's so important in any industry, but especially with what we're focused on with football.
So the business is nearly 10 years in fact, more than 10 years in. You've evolved into having a really popular podcast, which people can go and find. You've got the regular networking events, which is successful, and you've got the community, which is one of the biggest communities in sports science. Why are you doing a conference now? I'm not saying you shouldn't. I'm just saying because you have a huge community. You've got a lot of people that attend your events. You've got a lot of people in your online community. For anyone that doesn't know, because a lot of people follow you and a lot of people have spent time within the community and the events, what would you say to people? Why is the time now for this conference to happen?
It's felt really natural to actually do something like this. And I've got to give credit to Jordan for this, because if this was up to me, I'd have probably waited a few years.
And why was you thinking of waiting a few years, do you think?
Just because it's one of them things where you just...
Feels big.
Yeah, it does feel big. And it has been big so far. We've not even ran it yet. And the work that's gone into it is pretty epic. Like
just quickly, what date is this event going to be before we keep talking about it? When's the date?
So it's the 6th and 7th of May in Manchester at University Academy 92. So it's the class of 92's university in Manchester, which there's no better place for us to do it because of a number of different reasons, but the university have been amazing with working with us on the conference as well. So the facilities, I don't think many people know about the facilities and what's actually available at the uni, which has given them a great platform to promote it to all of our guests that we're going to have at the conference. But when we started speaking to different places, it was pretty obvious we were going to end up there. And obviously, I'm Northwest based. Manchester's the biggest city in the country, isn't it? So best city in the country. So yeah, it was pretty obvious we were going to end up around there.
And what can people expect at this event? So if I asked you in two different ways, for people that have been to your events before or have been involved in the community for a long time, why should they attend?
I think because it's just going to be an expansion of everything that we've done. So over these years, we've built up such a network of, like for me personally, we've built up such a network of coaches that we wanted to sort of bring this event together and do an extended version of our networking events. There's going to be a big element of that at the conference as well. It's going to look quite different to your normal conference of turning up, sitting down on your seat, making a few notes and sneaking out. You're going to be doing essentially what I've spoke about so far and meeting people and creating contacts. At the same time, our lineup of speakers I was quite surprised when I was reaching out to people to see how eager they were to get involved. I've also had loads of people messaging me saying, can I get involved and can I speak at the conference? So, I mean, the content you're going to take away from it and hopefully the experience across the 2 days is going to be like no other conference that is out there.
And for anyone that's not been involved in the community before, what's in it for them? What's the reason that they should come to your event and not one that's happened already?
I think just because of that, because a lot of our focus is on that. It's goes back to our purpose. It's increasing the value of sports science and strength and conditioning and making more opportunities for coaches. And I think there's some brilliant conferences out there. That's not to say there isn't, but a lot will be around strictly just on the content and the speakers. And we've got that plus a lot of other stuff going on as well.
That's it. And for anybody that's got a business at the moment that's community based, about building an audience and bringing people together with similar values and ideas, what tips would you give to people for doing that? Because obviously you've built a really strong community. It's been going for over 10 years. You've got a lot of like-minded people that can get so many different things out of it. And obviously a lot of this as well you've stumbled on, haven't you, where you've changed it from the original idea and you've just evolved it and made it more valuable. What tips would you give to anybody looking to build a community that's a really strong one?
I think the strength of it comes with time, because we've had people come into the community and leave that maybe it's not been the right fit. It's took time of sort of repetition of what we do in terms of the discussions and the different communication that goes on within the community. The content that goes on with the community is a bit of a trial and error to see what works and what doesn't. But yeah, I think in terms of like building the community, I think the main thing is it takes a fair bit of time, a lot of effort as well that isn't seen, like messages that are sent, like a lot of hours that go into building it and speaking to people and having conversations. And I think off the back of it, like reputation and our reputation has come down from being pretty genuine. Like we're not trying to do anything that we're not, like that we say we're doing. We are literally trying to give opportunities and increase value. And however we do that, if we're doing that in a few years' time, we're on the right lines with it. And I think that will naturally grow.
Do you still feel as passionate about the initial vision as you did over 10 years ago? Because that's one thing that really comes through. Like you've just mentioned it there. You're a founder that is just as curious as the people that are coming to the events. You're not someone that's just bringing people together who are curious, and you're allowing them to meet. You're actually just as curious as them. Is that still there the same as it was when you started?
I'd say more so.
Yeah.
Because of the fact that when we set out, it was very much like a bit blurred in a way because we had so many different ideas, whereas now it's a lot more focused. So for me, like talking about this, it does like fire me up and make me quite passionate about it. But the other thing is, like I've said this all along when we first set the podcast up, it's quite a selfish thing for me to do because we've done 300 and whatever episodes of the podcast. That's 300 conversations that I've had that I wouldn't have had. I've spoken to people that I definitely wouldn't have spoken to if I didn't have the podcast, like some big coaches. And that's all come off the back of having a platform and reaching out to people. And I can guarantee if I message someone saying, oh, can we jump on a call and just pick your brains or whatever it is, that's not the same as like actually getting someone onto a podcast on the platform. So it's a selfish thing for me in a way, but if people can benefit from that, then everyone wins.
What would you say you've got from the podcast that a lot of people wouldn't know without running a podcast? You've
Just
just
in
touched
terms
on it
of
there,
running
the
it.
networking. Yeah, what would you say that have been the things that you've got from it that maybe a lot of people wouldn't be aware of without running one themselves?
I'd say people are very receptive to going on to podcasts. They're very kind with the time. Like I've reached out to people online and been like, this is a bit of a Hail Mary. Like I'll send this message and just see whether they even respond to it. And people will be like, yes, when do you want to record? And be like, oh, right, okay. So it's very rare that we've not had replies and people say yes, or people say no even about coming on. So that's been quite a big thing for me because yes, it is now, it has got a bit of a reputation within the industry where people might recognise it. But even early on, when we set up, I think we had a big American coach on about 15 episodes in. Like no one had heard of it then. And I just sent out a message saying, can we speak out about these few things? And he was like, yeah, fine. Like, wow. We had Liverpool's head of, who was Liverpool's head of performance on about episode, I can't remember, episode 9 or something like that. So I reached out to him and he's like, yeah, fine, when do you want to record? So we had no reputation off the back of it. So people want to have discussions. And I think especially within football fitness and sort of performance sport, people like to have conversations. I've not found, can I swear on this?
Yeah.
Not found many dickheads.
I suppose as well, people don't go into those positions without being extremely passionate about it.
Yeah.
You don't just kind of jump in a position like that for the money, or like you've got to really want to do it, haven't you? And,
Yeah.
And it's the same outside of football. It's a very kind of niche position. You've got to be passionate about it. There's a lot of studying involved, etc., etc. So even these people that you reached out to that I imagine you thought were a little bit above where you were at the time, just because they're so passionate about that topic allows them to want to maybe give a bit more time to it than they would just for a generic podcast on sport, for example.
Yeah, and it's going to be beneficial to them as well, isn't it? Going on to something and speaking about what they do. It's a platform, and that ties into what we were saying about creating opportunities. Like we've had coaches on the podcast that might be in their first role in football, but I've said all along, like I want coaches to come on that might be in head of performance positions in the Premier League or Champions League clubs. I also want to have conversations with people that might work part-time with an amateur club and doing some S&C work, because then everyone is covered.
I guess as well for them, if they come on and maybe they're at an early point of their career, it gives them opportunity to show who they are. And I know you've got a lot of listeners. So there's a lot of people out there that would be listening that might actually be interested in working with somebody like this eventually, and hearing who they are on a podcast and their ethos and their values is gonna put them in good stead. Have you ever had any situations like that where it's led to opportunities for people being on the podcast?
Yeah, so I won't name the club or the person, but basically I had a director of football message me and said, we've got an opportunity for a role at the club and I'm looking at this person and I've listened to the podcast with that person and I like him, and I've also seen him work on a match day and I liked the look of what he was doing. How did you find him when he was not record him? Like, what did you think of him as a person? So it comes with like recommendations. Obviously, that was good, and it led to him getting a position. But we've had that quite a few times, because I think when people go on and speak, you get a real. It's very different to just seeing a CV, isn't it? If a CV arrives on your desk and maybe you got a picture or a title or whatever, that's very different to hearing someone talk about what they do.
Yeah, it gives context to everything, doesn't it?
Exactly, yeah. So that's basically adding another layer to them to take someone on. And also, it seems pretty obvious to me. Like, if you've had someone apply for a job and you maybe do a quick search on Spotify or whatever, and you've seen they've been on a podcast, you're probably going to listen to it, because you know that who's coming into the office then, don't you, to come into an interview.
So where would you like the business to be in 10 years?
I just said I don't plan this.
What's that?
I just said I don't plan this sort of stuff.
I know, but I know it's a really generic question, but I think it's relevant for this business, because it's so, as long as it's been here for over 10 years, but it's really gathered momentum, and it is very much a business for the long term. So where would you like it to be? I assume it's probably not going to be exactly where you think it's going to be. It's probably going to evolve in different directions, but you're about to do your first conference, you've got the podcast, you've got the community, you've got the networking events. Where would you like to see it in 10 years, or even what impact would you like it to be having?
Impact wise, I'll start on that. I want it to do exactly what we're setting out to do. I think the value thing is really important, both monetary for coaches, because I feel like that's still an issue in sports science and S&C. It's different for physios and head of medicals and people like that. I think if we can help in any way, trying to drive that forward and get clubs to prioritise it a little bit more, that's really powerful. Opportunities to get more coaches into clubs or opportunities, I think that's really important as well. But now we've got the sort of four strands: the podcast, the community, the networking events, and then now the conference. It's just driving all that forward. The community is a big one for us, because that's kind of our base. That's where everything feeds into. That's where our members are. That's where people can really create connections. It's really simple to use. You've got access to it online, but we also have like a WhatsApp group for coaches to chat about. So literally, if someone's got a performance question in their role or a challenge that they're facing, they can whack it in the group, and they can get coaches from around the world to give their perspective and experiences. And for me, that's massive, because sometimes you're in a position at a club where you might feel like you've not got many people to turn to, but now you have, because you've got this platform of people that you can get really good advice from. So that's the big focus for me, is the community side of it. The conference is going to be interesting, because I think from what we've set up this year and how I see it being delivered, I think it's a staple that we'll keep in annually. Where that goes in 10 years' time, I couldn't tell you. I'm open to seeing what's going to happen with that and the potential that could be, but I really feel confident in a lot of the groundwork that we've done that's led up to this point is going to allow us to create some really cool events and opportunities for people like the conference.
So if we go back before football fitness, you were working in football. I assume that was the long-term plan, right? To have a career in football. At what point did you think, actually, I now think I want to do this myself and be a business person? Was this something that you kind of saw in yourself at a young age, or is it something that you've ended up stumbling across, being your own business?
No, definitely not. Like I was trying to think back at like when I started in football, like even before that. So I did internships in S&C. So I did an internship in cricket, and then I did some unpaid work at the club that I ended up going into. So even back then, if you were to say like you're going to end up running businesses and setting up these businesses that I have now, that wouldn't have been the focus at all.
That wasn't the path that you were expecting.
No, not at all. It was very much like, and I think a lot of people do this in football. Again, we talk about this a lot on the podcast, that people chase like the tracksuit. They want to wear the certain tracksuit. They want the name on the tracksuit. They want the certain boots. They want to work with certain players. They want to work with first team in a stadium. And sometimes when they've done it, it's a bit like, right, what's the next step? So I think that was my kind of goal. That was the thing I wanted to try and push towards. I think I was very lucky in a way that we had the opportunities with the gym facility where that was setting up our own business, and we didn't know what we were doing with that either. So we just got started and just saw where that went. But doing that alongside football fitness, it taught me a lot of things in terms of running the business, because there's a lot of crossovers from sort of fitness to the football fitness stuff that we do. And there's a lot of crossovers in terms of the business side. So it was just a learning on the job kind of, that was this kind of experience.
And would you say now that you was always an entrepreneur and you just didn't realise that, or do you still think you're not a natural entrepreneur but you've been forced into doing it because there wasn't an avenue for your passion otherwise?
I think probably the latter in a way. I don't ever feel like I was like, people telling stories when they were kids and they were selling whatever and all that sort of, that wasn't really me. Like, I was playing football and, well, that was pretty much it, to be fair. Like, that was my interest. So it wasn't really, I can't think of anything where I had that in me. But then I very much feel like I was like the sort of technician on the technician side. I wanted to learn everything about sports science and S&C as soon as I got interested in that. The business side I just had to learn this. It wasn't necessarily an interest. Whereas now it's probably flipped because it's had to, because that's where we're at now. So, yeah, I can't say that was like a natural thing for me, really.
So I've got 2 questions to finish off on, which are a bit more personal questions. So what advice would you give to Ben Cartwright at 18 years old, looking back from yourself now? What advice would you give to yourself?
18 years old.
And I guess you've got to take into context that Ben Cartwright, 18 years old, didn't know they were going to be running businesses, so might not necessarily be business advice. But what would you say to yourself?
I'd probably say quite a controversial one, especially from our industry. I'd say, so 18, I'd say don't go to uni and go and see as many facilities and clubs, go and do as many visits as you can and pick up as much experience as you can. So I've always said that even financially, the money that you spend on university now, I don't want this to be seen as me pushing decisions on people.
It's all about context, isn't it? So for your journey, you may not have needed that route, basically.
Yeah, so where I'm at now, if I just took the money that I spent on university and spent it on travelling around and seeing different coaches and getting different experiences, that would probably be more beneficial to me.
And any personal advice for yourself?
At 18?
Yeah.
Stay in a little bit more. Personal advice. I don't know. What would you say to yourself at 18?
I don't know. I'm not being interviewed, am I?
Yeah, but I'm flipping this back on you.
I'll go to the next question. So the next question, which I think you'll have probably a more ready-made answer for, is what does retirement look like to you? You can say that any way you want.
A lot of golf. No. Retirement's funny, innit? Because I think people have this idea of like stopping, switching off and not doing anything. That's never going to be me. I'm not going to be able to do that. I think I just want to get things to a point where you're more in control of what you do on a daily basis. But I think purpose-wise, like, you see it all the time, don't you? That when people stop, they're trying to find a purpose to do something. And yeah, I think for me, it's always going to involve doing something, whether it's the businesses that I've got now, hopefully that is the case, or maybe something else. I'll definitely be involved in some way, shape or form. Like, it's not going to be a case of just downing tools and doing nothing. I literally couldn't think of anything worse of getting up and not having any sort of drive to go and do anything.
And if anybody wants to find you after this, where's the best place to find you? And obviously the businesses.
So I'd say for football fitness, if you look up on Instagram with Football Fit Fed, the tickets for events and the conference are at footballfitfed.com. That's probably the best place. And
ticket wise, where are you up to at the moment? Are you looking to, like, are they still on sale at the minute?
Yeah, they'll be on sale right up to until the event. We've already had coaches sign up from clubs right across the country in academy roles, first team roles. We've released probably 70% of the schedule as we speak right now. So we've got some big speakers. We've got Ben Rosenblatt, who was recently head of performance at the FA. He's going to be doing a keynote for us. Loads of other great speakers. We've got 3 round tables, one on women's football, one on challenges in the EFL, in the Football League, and then a nutrition focused one as well. So the big thing about what we want to do with the conference is that the timetable is going to be, you're going to be able to personalize your journey on the day. So kind of like an expo, when you go and you can sort of pick which talks you go to, it's going to be very similar to that. So when we release it, you'll see exactly what we're talking about, but you're going to be able to take away a lot of cool stuff on the days.
Brilliant. Well, thanks very much for your time. We'll post the links below the videos, and yeah, thanks for coming on.
Cheers, mate.